My name is Julia, and I'm a 33-year-old. I have been married to David, who is 36-year-old, for the past 10 years. We've been together for over 13 years. We met in college, and while he's a couple of years older than me, that never affected our relationship. I've always been ambitious, and David knew this from the start. I work as a fashion designer for a global label, but I can't name it for obvious reasons. My journey in this industry started with no connections or support, so I've worked incredibly hard to reach where I am. Climbing the career ladder has been challenging, and I'm proud of my achievements. When things got serious between David and me, I made it clear that my career was a priority. If he couldn't understand and support that, I couldn't see a future with him. David was completely supportive because he's ambitious too. He works in the finance department of a tech company and has steadily built his career. However, 3 years ago, we started having issues. David felt it was time to start a family since I had made significant strides in my career. I didn't feel the same way. While I acknowledged my progress, I knew there was still more I wanted to achieve. At that point, I was looking to switch to my current label, or another prestigious one. My old job was in jeopardy due to COVID-19, and layoffs seemed imminent. I needed to make the switch before anything happened. David thought this was the perfect time to have kids. If I got laid off, I could take a break, focus on a baby, and then return to work later. But that wasn't what I wanted at all. Conversations about this always turned into fights. I felt he wasn't listening to my perspective, so I started applying for jobs without telling him. I felt terrible about keeping this from him because we'd always shared everything, but I couldn't sacrifice my career. In late 2021, I landed my current job. I was over the moon, ecstatic, and extremely proud of myself. Unfortunately, David didn't share my excitement. He felt blindsided by my decision and worried about how it would affect our family plans. I tried to explain my point of view, but he was hurt and not receptive. I knew I needed to give it time to salvage and improve our relationship. By April 2022, I had proven my worth to my managers and supervisors, and my employment terms were upgraded. The benefits offered by my new job were unbelievable, which is why I needed to make the switch. In these big labels, once you secure a spot and work hard initially, you gain a lot of bargaining power. When I told David about the perks, he thought I was joking. They were that good. I would get 6 months of paid maternity leave along with another 6 months of either unpaid leave or work from home. None of this would have been possible at my old job. I thought this was the best time to try for a baby because I wouldn't have to compromise my career. I had a secure job with provisions to make the transition to motherhood as smooth as possible. Everything seemed to be going well, and we started trying for a baby. Unfortunately, we had no success until November 2022, so we decided to see a doctor. Both of us were worried, especially David. The test results showed I had a very low chance of conceiving naturally. I was devastated because I really wanted a child. The doctor explained that this wasn't related to my age or lifestyle, but was a side effect of an illness I had in my late teens. There was nothing I could do about it. David, however, didn't understand this. He believed my age was the issue and started blaming my ambition for our infertility. He insisted that if I had listened to him and not focused so much on my career, we would have been parents by now. No amount of discussion, arguments, family intervention, or medical opinion changed his mind. It felt like he was waiting for the perfect opportunity to blame me and hate my job. This was mentally exhausting for me, especially since I was also dealing with my own grief. I was heartbroken, facing the reality that I might never carry a child to term. It was the darkest period of my life, and I had no support from anyone. My in-laws intervened when they visited for Christmas that year. Seeing the state we were in, they were appalled. They urged us to work things out, but we were constantly butting heads. They decided to fly down and talk to us. My father-in-law harshly criticised David for blaming me for something I had no control over. Even my mother-in-law said she was disgusted by her son's behaviour. They supported me throughout, and I was very grateful. I know for sure that had they not intervened, our marriage would have broken down. In hindsight, I sometimes think that might have been better because none of us knew what was coming next. After many fights and tears, things got better between David and me. It was hard to accept that I wouldn't be able to conceive, but I was slowly coming to terms with it. A few weeks later, I asked David if he would consider adoption. We wanted to be parents, and many children needed loving homes. I had no issues with raising a child that wasn't biologically mine, but I wasn't sure how David felt. When we were dating, I had asked him about adoption, and he laughed, saying he never thought about it because he believed it would never be an issue. Approaching the topic with hesitation, I gently brought it up. Before I could mention adoption, David bluntly said he would not raise another person's child, so adoption was off the table. He was firm, leaving no room for discussion. I tried to press further to explore all options, but he was adamant. He wouldn't listen to anything I was trying to say. Exhausted, I asked him what other options we had. He said I could either go for fertility treatments, which he made clear was his preference, or we could consider surrogacy. I made it clear that I wouldn't take fertility treatments. I know many women who do, and the toll it takes on their bodies isn't worth it to me. Spending all that money and harming my body just to have a biological child didn't make sense. Both of us vetoed each other's first options. Mine was adoption, which he wasn't okay with, and his was fertility treatments, which I refused to entertain. The common ground that seemed somewhat acceptable to both of us was surrogacy. Neither of us preferred it, but after a lot of back and forth, we decided to go for it. Luckily, we found a willing surrogate very soon. It was his co-worker, Anna, a 27-year-old woman. He suggested her, saying she would be more than happy to help if we were a match. I was relieved that we didn't have to search hard for a surrogate, but I should have been more cautious. It seemed too coincidental that she was ready and willing so quickly, but at the time I was just grateful that the first part of the process was sorted. Anna went through some tests and intense doctor's appointments, and the doctors were optimistic. She was young and fertile, with a good chance of carrying the pregnancy to term. The samples had been collected and stored beforehand, so only the implantation remained. Once the paperwork was done, the doctors scheduled the big day. David and I were excited and anxious. Anna looked tense but put up a brave front for us. After the implantation, we were asked to come back in 2 to 3 weeks to see if it had been successful. Anna was given a to-do list, with the main point being to avoid stress. The next few days were a blur. We stayed in constant touch with Anna and visited her daily. When we found out the implantation was successful, it felt like the happiest day of my life. Any worries or regrets melted away. During the first trimester, we didn't announce the pregnancy to anyone. We planned to share the news in the 4th or 5th month. The first few weeks after the success were great. We stayed in touch with Anna and helped with any medical issues. However, by the 1.5 month mark, Anna's morning sickness became severe. She had to take sick leave from work. The doctors prescribed mild medicines, but essentially told her to tough it out, saying it would likely last the entire trimester, if not longer. Around this time, I fractured my right wrist and needed help around the house. David's attention was divided. I couldn't check up on Anna due to my injury, but David took charge. What began to irk me was that he seemed nonchalant about my injury, focusing all his attention on Anna. He wanted to spend every free moment either with her or talking about her. I tried not to say anything. understanding that David was juggling a lot, but I got snappy with him. It all came to a head when he asked if I even cared about our child, and I snapped back, accusing him of not caring about me. After this eruption of anger, we sat down and discussed our feelings. He promised to do better and make me feel important, and I trusted him. For the next few days, his behaviour towards me improved. He was more attentive, and we spent more time together, but his mind seemed elsewhere. He was still fawning over Anna like a puppy, and it felt like he saw her as his wife rather than our surrogate. Anna had taken paid leave from work, but David was working extra hours to cover for her and visited her daily, even if I had seen her earlier. The first thing David did after work was drive to Anna's place for what he called bonding time. It wasn't just with our surrogate, he was bonding with her. He'd come home, changed, eat, and go straight to bed. Our married life became dead. We didn't talk unless it was about Anna. His focus was not on our child, but on the surrogate carrying our child. Being around that constant talk made me feel inadequate and incomplete as a woman. I wanted to address it with him, but I felt I had no right because it was my infertility that led us to need a surrogate. Anna was helping us at the cost of her health, and I felt like a terrible person for feeling envy and anger instead of gratitude. The whole situation was driving me crazy. Instead of bringing us closer, surrogacy had driven a wedge between David and me. I couldn't shake the feeling that David and Anna were having an affair. Rationally, I could explain his behaviour as that of an excited father-to-be, but all the alarm bells were ringing in my head. I knew I had to do something to calm my nerves. By the time I decided to snoop through his stuff to find something to confirm or dispel my suspicions, Anna was over 5 months pregnant. While David focused entirely on Anna and her pregnancy, I was obsessed with finding out what was going on between them. I admit I wasn't the best partner to David or the best support system for Anna, but I was too muddled in my own head. For those who might say I should have just talked to David, I tried, multiple times. His behaviour never changed, making me feel even worse. So, whenever I had time, I checked his phone and chat logs. David has 2 phone numbers, so it took me a while to scan everything. I didn't find anything suspicious in his texts or Instagram messages. The texts and DMs were mostly about Anna informing him of her condition and him checking up on her. It was all very safe for work, and sometimes it felt like chunks of the conversation had been deleted because there was no flow. Feeling guilty but not satisfied, I decided to check his emails. I finally got a chance to access his computer. His professional email had nothing between them, just work-related correspondence. His private emails also showed no contact with Anna. Then I noticed a 3rd email account logged in on his system. I quickly opened it and found emails with just one other email address dating back to 2022. I copied and pasted a lot of them into a document and sent it to myself, feeling that this was my only chance to confirm my doubts without getting caught. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I wanted to read every single email, but knew I had to be smart and not impulsive. I decided to wait until he left for work the next day. What I found shook me to the core. David was not only cheating on me emotionally and physically, but he was also planning to defraud me. It took hours to go through all the emails. David and Anna had been having an affair since early 2022. Nobody in their office knew. It started with him confiding in her about our problems, and she would listen and validate him. Gradually it became more intimate, with sleazy texts and images and verbal abuse directed towards me. Reading this was horrifying. Anna couldn't have children of her own due to a problem with her eggs, but she was the type of woman David wanted as the mother of his kids. They hatched a plan together. They would get me to agree to surrogacy, and Anna would step in as the surrogate. David convinced Anna that once the baby was born, She should quit her job and become a stay-at-home mum. To afford a luxurious life with only one income, they planned to rope me in. Right before the baby's birth, David would start picking fights with me, leading to our divorce. He planned to press the courts for primary custody because even though I was the biological mother, he was willing to raise the child with the surrogate. This way, I'd have to pay hefty child support until the child turned 18, which I could afford given my job. They intended to mooch off these payments and live a picture-perfect life together. All of this was detailed in those emails. At first, I didn't even feel hurt. I just felt shocked and numb. My brain couldn't process the months of meticulous planning. If they were so happy together, if he didn't want to be with me, he could have done the respectable thing and told me. I had been living in a sham of a marriage for the last 2 years, working through issues and letting my self-esteem be crushed, all for him to have an affair and a baby with another woman, my baby. Every ounce of love I felt for him vanished in an instant. All I could feel was rage and disgust. I knew I had to do something, and fast. I needed to get my ducks in a row and get myself and my kid out of this mess as soon as possible. I called my lawyer friend Stacy and told her I needed to stay with her for a few days to sort things out. I then texted David saying that Stacy was sick and needed help, so I'd be staying at her house to avoid being disturbed. I wasn't sure of my legal standing, but I knew I wouldn't give up or back down. Update 1. Stacy and I had a long chat. She couldn't fathom that all this had been going on for 2 years without me having a clue. I told her that despite our troubles, I never had a reason to distrust him. I never anticipated that the man I'd been with for 13 years would do something like this and betray me completely. Fortunately, Stacy and I are clear on the next legal steps. She's confident I will win this case. However, she says everything needs to happen before the delivery and we have to make their affair public. If we don't, I don't stand a chance in court. The other option is to wait for David to start the divorce and then try to get primary custody, but that seems unlikely. David doesn't deserve any grace. He deserves all the mudslinging that will come his way. I can't wait to expose him and Anna in court, to our families, and most importantly, at their workplace. That's the only way I can get my revenge. Update 2. It's been 3 days since I read his emails. After spending a day with Stacy, I went home for a day and packed all my important stuff while David was at work. I didn't want him to suspect that I knew anything or that I was planning something, so I behaved as normally as possible. Stacy was getting the divorce papers in order. Today, right after David went to work, I took all my stuff and went to Stacy's house. She had already sent the divorce papers to his office and a notice to his boss, informing them that 2 employees were involved in a long legal suit on grounds of adultery and fraud. This was meant to make management aware of the affair between my soon-to-be ex-husband and his partner. It had the desired effect because David has been trying to contact me through all means possible, calling, leaving voicemails, texting, and even using his friends' and colleagues' phones. Stacy advised me not to answer any unknown calls and to record any that I do take because anything he says from this point on can be used as evidence. His messages are already incriminating. He alternates between begging me to come back and calling me every name under the sun. Surprisingly, Anna hasn't contacted me, though I'm sure David has informed her of the recent developments. I think I finally have the time and luxury to grieve the loss of my marriage and the life I once knew. The confrontation is over, and I've been in fight mode since I found out. Now, I can finally let myself feel all the emotions I've been bottling up for the last few days. Update 3. It's been a month since I served Zach with divorce papers, and things are looking good on my end, if I may say so myself. I've moved in with Stacey for now, but I'll finalise my lease for a new apartment by the end of the week. It's a 2-bedroom place in a decent part of town and fits my budget perfectly. Zach got fired, which was what Stacey intended when she leaked information to his boss. Now, with no income, Zach and Anna can't claim custody of the child when it's born. Anna hasn't been fired, probably because she's pregnant, but she's been asked to reconsider her position at the company post-pregnancy. People at their company think the baby is Zach's, which isn't helping their situation. Their reputation is tarnished and it's affecting Anna a lot. I know all this because of a drunken call from my soon-to-be ex-husband. All in all, Stacey and I are pretty confident we're going to win this one. I can't share more details because the case is still ongoing and it could be used against me. I might have to grant some visitation rights to Zach, but according to Stacey, Anna will have no legal rights over the child, which is a relief. This will be my last update because I don't want any details of the case getting out and risking identification. Thank you to everyone who commented and suggested a course of action for me. I'm very grateful, but now I'm taking a break from Reddit and moving forward.